Morning. May I request all of you on the count of three, clap once. 1, 2, 3. 8815, August 6, 1945, from the bomber Enola Gay, the first atomic bomb in the whole world was used in Hiroshima. It weighed 4 tons, 1 meter in diameter, and 9 feet long. 4 tons equivalent to a male elephant, they say. It first wobbled down from Enola Gay. When it left the aircraft, they say the Enola Gay jumped up 10 feet because releasing all that weight, and finally wobbled and came down toward the target and exploded 1 mile above Hiroshima, above the target. It was designed that way to have an umbrella effect to cover a major area of Hiroshima. At the core of the explosion, it was an uranium bomb. It was 10 million degrees centigrade. At the ground zero, it was several thousand degrees centigrade. You can imagine a steel bar will melt at 1,500 degrees, but several thousand degrees at the ground zero. There was a hospital called Shima Hospital. It was disintegrated, disappeared into dust. Occupant in the hospital just vanished. It was such a tremendous explosion. And with that heat and flash, people who were around there 2.5 miles away, if the pattern was black and white, the black part itched on their skin, and the white part reflected the light and became unblemished. It was such a very strange situation. Now, about a month or so before, there was a bombing raid at a city called Kure, which is about an hour's train ride from Hiroshima to the northeasterly. It was a naval academy city and also a naval factory port, just like Candlestick Park might have been in this area, or Richmond Bay. And it was a night attack with an incendiary attack, and they say the city that was built took 80 years to build. It was decimated in 2 hours with the incendiary attack. Now, if you recall, also in Germany, Dresden, there was a city bomb raided by American aircraft. The first was saturated with the bombing. The building was destroyed. Now, 1 hour following that, British aircraft came and saturated with incendiary bomb. And the total city was wiped out with the fire. It was such a tremendous fire that people who evacuated into the tunnel shelter, the shelter air was sucked out of the tunnel to support the fire, and people within the shelter died from suffocation or lack of air. It was such a situation in the war condition. So you could imagine what happened in Kure as well. But Kure was Japan has realized is mountainous country, so there's not many flat land. So the city that was destroyed was at the base of the mountain, and mostly commercial buildings were destroyed. Residential and the upper part of the hills were survived. I bring this up because when this happened, citizens of the Hiroshima thought they would be the next target. But the interesting, during the 4 years of war now, Hiroshima had many bombing raids, but no bomb was dropped. So Hiroshima City was pretty clean. So atomic bomb became the first bomb to drop in Hiroshima. But because of the incident in Kure City, the government called for citizens to come out to help to create a road of bombing break, like we did in the 1906 earthquake. We purposely dynamited rows of building so the building would be down, so the fire would not travel across this particular block. And that was the same idea in Hiroshima. So the warning went out, and a cry for help went out to the village of the surrounding area to come out to build this fire break. My aunt, who was 19 at the time, healthy of course, she was married 1 year at that time, and she was free. Her husband was at war, so she volunteered, went out, and took the 7 o'clock train to Hiroshima City. And I took the 7:30 train. When I left the house, I told my father, "Father, I know I'll go to the factory, which was we are assigned to work during the war." And this became so that in December of 1944, the call went out that anybody above age of 13 was taken out of the classroom to work for the war effort. It called gakuto doin at the time, Japanese word. So a student was taken out of the classroom, was assigned to various factory and place of work. Girl student worked as a telephone operator or helped make parachute or uniform. And boys worked for our school. It was a technical school. So I was assigned at the Hiroshima, just outside Hiroshima, called Toyo Kojo or Toyo Factory. Today, the Toyo Mazda truck factory. But at that time we made rifles and airplane parts. And this came about because of December warning that I was attending the school in Sakura City, but because of this calling, I transferred to Hiroshima Technical School, be closer to home. And since I'm not going to school, classroom, I was being assigned to a factory close to home, I transferred there. And I took the 7:30 train to go to work. And I told my father, "Father, today we got an announcement that we're supposed to go to Hiroshima City, work as a fire brigade to tear down Rose's home as a volunteer, as a class student." So I took 7:30 train, but as you know, by then, as you recall, Iwo Jima was decimated, turned into American territory. An airport was built there, and also Tinian Island, an hour away from Iwo Jima, became an airport. But Tinian Island is an island where the atomic bomb was stored. It left San Francisco first week of July on Indianapolis cruise ship and traveled zigzag across Pacific Ocean because of to avoid detection by the submarine, and got to Tinian Island safely at the last week of July. It was unloaded and stored away. But because of the weather condition, they could not leave the island to bomb Hiroshima until the weather cleared. That was the situation. Now, Tinian Island is about 6-hour flight time from there to Hiroshima. And weather, as I mentioned, is very crucial. So they had to check the weather daily and weather condition coming out of China, across Japan Sea to Japan and to the Pacific. And finally, August 6th was the date chosen. But interestingly, when the crew that was training at the Tinian Island with the Enola Gay had a break to go back home for a few days before the raid took over. But crew member was warned not to say anything about the training, a special training they had, because this was really secret mission. And the crew member themselves did not really know what they were carrying, because it was top secret, first in the world, and we didn't want Russian people to know about our secret. But it turned out that one of the crew members went home and sort of bragged to the girlfriend, "I'm on a special training mission." And long and behold, he was taken out as a crew member, because there's military spies around the area, and so they heard this, they said, "He's not capable of flying with us." So it was that critical. And also the crew was given cyanide pills to carry, just in case the bomber was shot down, and the Japanese government was able to obtain the special bomb on the aircraft. They didn't want anybody to reveal what this bomb was. So they was ordered to commit suicide by taking the cyanide pill. And that was the situation on Enola Gay. The 3 aircraft came to Japan. They left 2 o'clock in the morning, 6 hours flight time, flew over Iwo Jima and had due north Hiroshima. But also interesting that happened in Hiroshima. At midnight of August 6th, there was an air raid siren that went off. People in bed got out of bed, went to the bomb shelter. And the bomb shelter was 3 feet wide, 5 feet long, and 5 feet deep. And over that, the heavy timber lined it, and from the dirt from below on top of it. And that became the bomb shelter. Regular bomb that fell nearby, they could have survived. And if there was a fire nearby, they could escape from it. But that was the situation as a bomb shelter. So at 2 o'clock, there was a bombing raid. Siren went off, and people got out of bed and went into the bomb shelter. And it turned out to be a false alarm. And it happened all the time during the war. This is 4 years of war now. It happened all the time. Now, as you know, Germany surrendered in April of 1945. So the factory I worked in, I was assigned to work on the lathe, and a carved steel bar and check of micrometer. And what it was is a replacement part for the machinery that we received from Germany. And Germany was known as the top mechanics, engineers that created a unique machine. And as you know, Germany, Italy, and Japan were called the 3 Axis. They formed together to fight against the United States and Britain. So that was a situation for me to work at the factory. Now the air attack on midnight turned out to be a false alarm. So people went back to bed, and at 7 o'clock, there was another air raid. Then at that time, there was a single aircraft came by to Hiroshima. So everybody got out of bed, doused the fire, they were cooking breakfast because of fire danger, and they went to the bomb shelter. And sure enough, the one aircraft came and circled around Hiroshima. And they found that Hiroshima at 7 o'clock in the morning, it was covered with fog like San Francisco was, so there was no opening. But as they were leaving Hiroshima to go to another target down south, like Kokura or Nagasaki, they saw opening in the cloud that drifting toward Hiroshima. So they cranked the phone and said, AP, to 3 aircraft 1 hour behind following. And that became the Enola Gay group. So this single aircraft circled and left for home, because all it was a weather reconnaissance aircraft. So the people came out of the bomb shelter and prepared breakfast and dressed to go to school or work. But I was reported to the my factory, and I took the 7:30 train, and the train got delayed by 15 minutes. And this happened all the time because of constant bombing raid up north where the train started. And when there's a raid, a train will hover in a train tunnel, and when the plane left, it will come out. So therefore, minute by minute, the train would delay by 15 minutes when it reached my station. So I took the train 15 minutes late and got to a station called Mukainada, which is a station one prior to Hiroshima. That's where I got off and ran to my reporting station at the factory. We're still students, so we had to take roll calls. So we took roll call, and 8:15 rolled by. And here we saw 3 aircraft in the air. We heard the familiar sound of the B-29, the Flying Fortress. And we wondered, here we see the aircraft, why is there no warning signal? It's warning signal for aircraft being seen is a short blast, imminent attack, take cover immediately. And there was no signal. It was open aircraft, and we wondered why there was no signal there. So we watched the aircraft coming toward us, and we studied the aircraft during the war that fit directly on the path of the war aircraft. If the bomb fell, it would be falling to you. But we noticed it was burning away 5 degrees from us toward Hiroshima, which was a little bit to the southwest. So we were watching this, the flash went off. And when I saw the flash, I immediately fell on the ground instinctively, covered my eyes, the forefinger, and the thumb in the air. This was done because if the bomb fall near you, the blast will cause a vacuum and pop the eyeball out and the eardrum. So you protect that. And falling to the ground, of course, to be a low layer so that any flying debris would not hit you. So this is what happened at A-15. 90% or 99% of the factory window was blown out. The factory structure stayed standing. It was about 3.5 miles from the hypercenter, as we found out later. And I was weighing about 100 pounds at that time, and my body felt like floating in the air with blasted wind coming. There was one funny story. One of the students was assigned to work on the giant crane that ran on the ceiling of the factory. He was up there early to check on the fuse. And he saw the flash and said, "Oh my God, the fuse went out." So he was checking the fuse and realized it was not a fuse. And somehow he got down from 25 feet up in the air and was uninjured. And this is one of the stories that we heard. And this type of thing happened throughout. And so when that happened, I was flat on the ground, and when I opened my eyes, you couldn't see anything. The cloud and dust around you covered the area. And I looked around and saw one of my fellow students start running toward the bomb shelter that was created for us. It was a tunnel in a small mountain. So I followed him, and it was 1,000 yards away, and I came to the entry of the tunnel and looked back to the city. It was about 30 seconds after. That's what I saw, this painting you see on the altar, that I recall painting it in college. And I was being an architect student. We had to take many art class. It was a free day. And I somehow started sketching this image, and this was 1951 at the time. And the teacher said, "What is this you're doing?" And so this recollection of my thought that I saw the atomic bomb explode in Hiroshima. And she got excited and started calling the newspaper people to interview me, because at that time, after the war, it was a Cold War period in Russia and the United States, and trying to see what type of a bomb shelter we need to escape this type of bombing. But to escape from atomic bomb, it's almost impossible. You have to go maybe 100 feet underground, and have supply of water and food and the air to breathe, and to have that kind of facility is almost impossible. And as you recall, we had an incident in Hawaii not too long ago. But as you know, every Tuesday at noon, do you know what happened in the city? Anybody? What happened? The siren goes off. Why? It's making sure the siren is working when we needed it. And we hear it constantly. We don't imagine what it is. But last fall in Hawaii, somebody pushed the wrong button, and it was an alarm button. And people in Hawaii didn't know what to do. The alarm went off. People knew trying to hide somebody. They went into a tunnel between the east and west coast of Hawaii, because there's a tunnel connecting that, and traffic was jammed, of course. And parents were hiding their children in a manhole or maintenance hall underground, and that only thing they could think of to hide from any type of a nuclear weapon or explosion in the air. But fortunately, it turned out to be a false alarm. But here in the United States, we should be practicing that thought every day, because, as you know, the North Korea have been threatening for 2-3 years now, Kim Jong-un, saying he have a nuclear weapon developed and he could bomb the United States over the northern pole, and he calculated a distance about Washington, D.C. This is about 6,500 miles to Washington, D.C. New York City is 6,700 miles Chicago, 6,500 miles. Anchorage, 4,000 miles. And, Seattle, 5,100 miles. San Francisco, 5,500 miles. Los Angeles, 6,000 miles. And Hawaii is 4,500 miles from North Korea to launch the missile. So we're not too far away. And now President Putin, in the State of the Union message in this year, March, he proclaimed that they have developed a missile that will travel 6 times the speed of sound, and it could be launched from a submarine or aircraft and went into a stratosphere and come down to the target within 8 minutes time or a few minutes time to hit the target. And the United States also proclaimed they have something similar being developed. It costing about $5 billion at the time, and saying the schedule for completion is about 2022, because there's a lot of research has to be done. And they disclaim Russia will have this type of equipment as yet, but put on the television animated screen to show that what it's doing. And from Bermuda, it's only 8 minutes to Washington, D.C. or Pentagon. For the United States, we have it from Guam Island toward China. We could launch it within 8 minutes time to head to China. So it becomes a very critical time space. And why is this so critical? Because it's traveling such a high speed. It's only 5 feet in diameter. So you cannot really put in a nuclear weapon and that small, but it could be a very high density of explosion. And it could, with that speed, it could penetrate a 7 billion aircraft we have and decimate our aircraft carrier. And it's become a really a big problem for us today. And of course, we try to negotiate with North Korea. And these items, not only the United States and Russia, but China and even Australia, Japan, and France been doing research. But for other countries like Australia and Japan and France, they're designing so that they can find an aircraft that will fly 1,000 miles in 1 hour. But to cover the shell of this aircraft at such a supersonic speed that heats up at tremendous temperature. As we have noted, the astronaut coming home from the moon, when they reach the Earth's atmosphere, it burns into a flame because the atmosphere is so heavy that it have tremendous friction and call into flame. So this is the problem they're trying to resolve. But as we know, when the Second War ended, there was 60,000 nuclear bombs in the world, and 90% of it between Russia and United States. Other 10%, India, Pakistan, and England, maybe France had it. But other countries also have it, and becoming a very tenuous situation, very frightening situation we live in. Now, for me, at the Toyo factory, we were hidden. At 9 o'clock in the morning, we were curious to see what's happening outside. We came out the outdoor. We saw the mushroom cloud dissipated, it turned into thunderstorm cloud, eclipse cloud, climbing higher and higher, and flash of thunder, and also start to rain, and the people in the northwest area. And we found that people who got drenched by the so-called black rain that coming out of this thunder cloud, they didn't have no injury in the body, but they became ill. The hair started to fall out, bleeding from the nose and gum, and they died about a week or so. Because what happened was, what we didn't realize is the radiation in the nuclear weapon. In the First World War in 1917, Geneva Convention said we cannot use any poisonous bomb for warfare. But when the nuclear weapon was developed, Oppenheimer went to President Truman and said, please do not use this bomb because it has poison, nuclear radiation in the bomb. And Truman kicked Oppenheimer out of the office. Take this crybaby out of here. Because he was planning to use the bomb anyway, whatever he could, to end the war. And even MacArthur and Eisenhower pleaded to Truman not to use this horrible bomb. Japan have already lost a bomb in June and July, and they're trying to surrender. And surrender letter was intercepted by General Grove in Manhattan Project area, and he kept the letter and started passing it down. And other general knew this was happening, but it could not stop Truman from using. But the reason why Truman used the bomb, he said, first of all, we're going to stop the Russians from invading Japan. And it warned Russia, we have the secret weapons, so don't do anything to invade Japan. And secondly, if we continue the war, there will be 500,000 troops from the United States who will invade Japan and then be killed. And thirdly, they used $2 billion for the Manhattan Project. And in 3 years, we were successful in building the atomic bomb. Germany was also building the atomic bomb, but they were squashed by the secret military individual and took the heavy water industry factory out in northern part of Europe. So Japan was successful in building the atomic bomb. But again, in the morning, when the atomic bomb exploded, there were 350,000 citizens in Japan, in Hiroshima itself, and one third of this many, 80,000 people, died instantly. Were gone. It was that tremendous damage to people. And of course, fire raged for 3 weeks in Japan, in the Hiroshima city. And of course, firefighting system was eliminated. There was 200 doctors serving 55 hospitals in Hiroshima. Hiroshima was considered 10th largest city in Japan, Tokyo being number 1. And out of the 200 doctors, 20 doctors survived. You could see the horrendous damage that atomic bomb had done. And out of the 55 hospitals we had, only 3 survived. So horrendous amount of damage, atomic bomb. You could imagine San Francisco must have hundreds and hundreds of hospitals here, and all that would be destroyed. And out of the 1,780 nurses, only 126 nurses survived. So you could see the horrendous damage that was done. And there was no place for the injured people to go, any place where it could go, any aid. But it was that type of situation and that horrendous condition Hiroshima experienced. Now, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our teacher came to us and said, if you're not injured, you live away from the city, you can leave the factory. And that was the final order. So I was able to go out to the factory and so went out to the highway and saw droves of people coming out from the city, injured, all kind of injury, no hospital, no medication. But citizens of the area did whatever they can to aid the burned people by putting any kind of oil and bandage in it. Then I noticed a ghost train coming out of Hiroshima Station. So I was able to run and hop on the train and looked inside. All the windows were blown out from the train, from the blast. And the side that faced the bomb was all incinerated. It was blister of paint. Inside it was the chaos, and the furniture was all over. And people yelled, water, water, please give me water, and first aid. But I had nothing to offer them. So I decided I'm going to walk home. So I walked the last 10 miles It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got home about 6 p.m. And my grandmother was scanning the horizon, watching for people coming home, and spotted me. I was very happy. Oh, you're safe. You're home. And the first question was, where's my father? He went looking for you at first thing in the morning. I never saw him. So I investigated the house we lived in. All the doors, the sliding doors, were down on the floor, but nothing broken. So we were able to prop it up and put it back in the sliding guide. And we were able to procure dinner, and our father came home about 9 p.m. and said, and we listened to his story. He said he came to the factory gate and inquired, but there was chaos. People running around in a circle, had no answers. So he assumed that we were marching to the city from my information I gave him. So he went to the bridge to cross into the city, was stopped by the MPs. People just coming out of the city, no one to be into the city. Hiroshima City was ablaze. And he saw another relative of his doing the same thing, looking for his younger brother. So they waited for the tide to subside and went downstream, waited across the river, and started looking at the dead bodies around on the street. And as I mentioned earlier, the incendiary attack on Kure City. So Hiroshima City prepared their homes with 100-gallon tanks of water in every place they could put it, so they could fight the incendiary attack. But in Hiroshima condition, people dived into the water tank to cool off from the fire and drowned there and died. So that was the situation throughout the city. And there's Hiroshima City is a city with 7 rivers, and Hiro means wide, Shima is island. So that's where they got the name of the city, Hiroshima, wide island. So there's 7 rivers running into the city. So all the rivers that you could imagine were covered with dead bodies. People trying to get away from the fire, the whole city was ablaze, and they dove in and drowned themselves. So that was the situation in the city. And that's what my father saw. I said, he went to body, and most of the bodies, person, uniform or clothes were burned off. Name tag that we had on, name and blood type was sewed on there. We usually had a school emblem to indicate which school this person belonged to. And he said you couldn't see any of that properly. So he finally came home, and we were very happy to see him home. Then we realized our aunt, she left early on 7 o'clock train, not around. So we realized she in the city. So next morning, my father and grandfather got a push cart and went to the city looking for her. Again, going from body to body, inquiring, where's my aunt Shizuko? And he went to body, temple ground, and school ground to find the person. And of course, when you see the person, the hair is burned off, face is burned, and the body is burned and blistered. And we learned Aunt Shizuko was on the roof, taking roof tile down the chute to save for future use. And that was her assignment. And she saw the same 3 aircraft we saw at the factory, 8:15. No alarm. I wonder why there was no alarm going on. And she was blown off the roof, and she somehow crawl and run. She escaped from the city to some safe ground, to her school ground, and where she was found. She was found about 3 days later. It's amazing she survived and alive at the time. So she brought home the pushcart. But when she brought home, no doctors or medication to give her. So what my grandmother did was bake potatoes. We were farmers, so we could bake potato, mashed potato, and put that as a bandage over the burn. And my aunt was on the roof, facing the aircraft coming. So when it blasted, 50% of the body was exposed to the flash. So again, 50% of the body was burned, and she blown off. And when she recovered, her hand was fused together, her arm was bent. It never stretched out. So we have to take a doctor, operate it, and separate the fingers, but it never stretched, always bent. And fingers, of course, healed, skin was taut, and arm never stretched out. The keloid burnt meat on the body, and they had to surgically remove it. And she would put many plastic surgery from skin from the good part of her body and transfer the body. And she still lives today. She's 92 today. She's 5 years older than I am. And as I am talking, she's doing the same thing. She's talking about her experience at the age of 19. She came as ambassador to United States, England, and Germany. This was back in 1964, I think it was. And she showed her scars to the people of the world, said this is what happened when you use an atomic bomb. Never to use it again on any human being or anybody. And she does the same thing today as I am speaking to the television or the radio and in the newspaper. Now, as I mentioned, all the nuclear weapon is around us. So we have to be aware. Now we have, on the funeral of a Buddhist funeral, we usually chant or read a certain message from a monk called Rennyo Shonin, or Saint Rennyo. And he wrote this Japanese poem. In Japanese, said, Buppo ni wa munji toyu koto wa arumajuki. He's saying that there's no thing as tomorrow. Consider every day is the last day of your life. That nobody will give you insurance for you being alive tomorrow. So be kind to everybody, protect yourself, and live every moment of your life peacefully and with good thoughts. And as I mentioned on the funeral, the minister will usually read the Gobunsho, is a certain letter that Rennyo wrote. He wrote hundreds of letters, and these letters was like a sermon that it preached to the uneducated people. And one of it read this way: every morning we wake up, and with our cheek is rosy cheek and very healthy, but somehow during the day we die. We don't know why, but we die. And people, a loved one gather, try to do something, but nothing could be done. And by night, we're taken out to the field, put on the funeral pile, and turned to white ashes by next morning. And that is a situation of ourselves. So that's what I call white ashes is read at the funeral, to remind ourselves that we're not a being that we could live every day. So that it's a tremendous message to us. So with that message, I'd like to close. The painting, as I mentioned, close there, indicate that what I remember seeing. And I'm very lucky to be here. And I speak I'm guest speaker at the University of San Francisco. And it's a philosophy class. And they like to hear me speak. And then in grammar school and high school, they study about the Second War and how it ended and the atomic bomb. So we have to be aware and build this awareness into peaceful use, and write to a congressman and stop this madness of building nuclear weapon, and because we have enough to disseminate Earth itself. So with that, I'd like to close. May I ask together, put your hand together and gassho. Namu Amidabutsu. Namu Amidabutsu. Namu Amidabutsu. Thank you very much for listening to me.